And let's start off with a song. Rebecca, take it away.
Great. I'm gonna be doing one of the songs in the songbook, Buen Shabbat, because I feel like we don't get to do a lot of Ladino melodies. Buen Shabbat, con salud y vida. Buen Shabbat, buen Shabbat, a toda la familia. Buen Shabbat, buen Shabbat, con salud y vida. Años muchos, con paz y alegría.
Thank you. So we'll continue. The past, the present, and future are timelessly linked in the spinning circle of life. Our past was a seed that became the present. We can make it bloom in the future if we nurture it with love, respect, and understanding of the shared culture and heritage that we call life. So we will continue with our candle lighting. So this will be call and response. So we renew ourselves for the week ahead, everyone, so that we may have the strength for ourselves, our families, and our part in making the world a better place. We kindle the lights of Shabbat as symbols of human enlightenment and human compassion to celebrate our coming together, to illuminate our lives and the warmth we find in our community. We remember the generations before us who lit candles as we do and found beauty and serenity in their light. So as we light our candles, we can say together, everyone, Na'eh ha'or ba'olam, Na'eh ha'or ba'adam, Na'eh ha'or ba'shabbat, Nokir et or ha-Shabbat. How wonderful is the light in the world. How wonderful is the light within humanity. How wonderful is the light of Shabbat. We cherish the light of Shabbat.
Na'eh ha'or ba'olam, Na'eh ha'or ba'adam, Na'eh ha'or ba'shabbat, Nokir et or ha'shabbat. Efo ori ori bi, Efo tikvati tikvati bi, Efo kochi kochi bi, Begam bach begam bach, Efo kochi kochi bi, Begam bach begam bach. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me. And in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me. And in you, and in you.
Thank you. The values of secular humanistic Judaism. On Shabbat, we celebrate and reaffirm our Jewish identity. A Jew is someone who identifies with the history, culture, and future of the Jewish people. We make connections to our past through our ancestors and to our future by leading meaningful lives. We believe that Jewish identity is best preserved in a free, pluralistic environment that honors all cultures. We believe in the nobility of human fellowship and the joy of unity. The freedom and dignity of the Jewish people must go hand in hand with the freedom and dignity of every human being. Human beings possess the power and responsibility to shape their own lives independent of supernatural authority. Jewish history is a human saga, a testament to the significance of human power and human responsibility. We believe in the gift of human reason and the strength of human potential to shape our lives. So we're going to change the order of service a little bit now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about hope. Ever since November the 5th, I have been doing a lot of counseling. If you're thinking of becoming a rabbi, keep in mind that this is something that you're going to have to do. Calls from people in distress, wanting to discuss things and wanting you to figure things out and make things better for them. So I decided to talk a little bit about hope tonight, and I know that you spoke about hope during the Rosh Hashanah. So I thought that maybe we would be able to do that again. So I'm going to choose a meditation by Noam Chomsky, which is in our book. And he says, if you assume that there is no hope, you guarantee that there will be no hope. If you assume that there is an instinct for freedom, that there are opportunities to change things, then there is a possibility that you can contribute to making a better world. So this is a difficult moment in history for sure. But the truth is, most moments in history are difficult. And as we live in history, our lives are full of difficult moments. The current weekly Torah portions describe Joseph, his brothers, and their father Jacob as if they were real people in history, and they might have been. But if so, then they surely face adversities. Because no one gets through life unscathed, we all face challenges. Our Jewish history is filled with them. However, our tradition is also a tradition filled with hope. We humanistic Jews are a community of hope. The hope we experience here together helps us to hold on to all the good things we share. With deep roots in a long and courageous past, we are grounded in the present, in the here and now, looking with hope toward the future. We have a vision of a better world that is possible. We experience the freedom of our Judaism, a freedom that allows us to dream our own special dreams, a world where diversity is respected, the earth is cherished, religion is non-dogmatic, and peace is possible. It's a moral agenda and a commitment to justice. It is a vision we laugh and sing about, we debate and sometimes argue about, a vision we can only reach if we are together. How could we ever let go of that? There is a bit of wholeness in this beautiful and broken world, and it is called hope. We each have it, and without finding it, we can't live. It is the essence of our belief. Let us trust in that hope, and Shabbat Shalom. And now we have another song. Rebecca,
Great.
take it away.
Thank you. We're gonna go to a song, also in the booklet, One Chorus, One Family. Human spirit, human mind, heart of humanity. Bring us all together as one. We're part of one great family. And our family sings in one chorus. We're part of one world symphony. Though the song of life began before us, we each have our own harmony. So sing out and rejoice. We're part of one great chorus. Each voice has its own harmony. Every child who's born to sing, we all add our voice and time. Words and deeds are lyrics we sing to the music, rhythm, and rhyme. Each beat of your heart has a measure to life's ever-growing melody. So sing out, rejoice, you are part of one chorus and one family. How glorious to be a part of one great chorus and part of one great family. How glorious to be a part of one great chorus and part of one family.
So now we come to the part of our service where we share our joys, concerns, and sorrows. So Kathy, I would like you to moderate that for us. And if anyone has anything that they want to share, I invite them. Well, we invite you to tell us.
Well, if nobody's going to say anything, it's
Yes.
trivial, but I was at my main conference, and I'll skip all the saga of my feelings of not doing well in my career, but it was very nice. It went very well, and I felt very good. I wouldn't have spoken up, but since nobody else was.
Okay, great. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Anna, I see your hand up. Are you muted?
No, that was a mistake, but I'm trying to send a chat, but I'm not being successful. I just have a message for Kathy. Would you, I need to ask you about something. Is it possible to get your number?
Yeah.
So you want to email it to me?
Yeah, I'll send it to you privately.
Okay, thank you.
Will, I see your hand up.
All right, how do you do? This is Will tuning in from Kew Gardens, new. And I wanted to introduce myself. Among my other activities, I'm a trustee of the Alliance for Patrilineal Jews. We're here, we are mongrels, and we're not going away. So I gather from the principles, you at least don't have any problem with us.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Thanks for being here.
Oh, now I can say something.
Sure. Yeah, go Anna.
First of all, I don't think of myself as a mongrel. Then we keep hearing about hope, one rabbi or another, and I wish you would be more specific.
Okay.
Don't even use the word hope, just be specific so I can be fortified. We
Okay.
have a
but-
long history and just be specific.
I would like to say something toward that if I could. This is not really supposed to be a discussion, but I can't let that go.
I see Gail's hand up first, and then we'll come back
Oh.
to you.
Okay.
Gail? You're muted.
This is along the joys part. I did something that was kind of fun today. I'm acquainted with the costume designer for the television show Elspeth, and my sister and I were going through my mom's things to give things away. She passed away a while back, and there are all these hats, and I thought, well, they're from quite a while ago. I thought they might make good costumes of some sort. So I asked this person if he would have use for some hats. And he said, yes, I will send a production assistant over to pick them up. So today I handed 3 hat boxes, each with 3 or 4 hats in them. Maybe they'll get on television one day. I thought that was kind of fun. That was in the joy section.
Yeah.
Joyce.
Dominic, I see your hand up. Do you have a joy or a sorrow?
Yeah, I've recently read an article in New York Times because I'm basically like walled off of the news most of the time when it comes to Europe. But when the far right and right in America got like idea for something like banning stemming drugs for minors. In America, these ideas come with whiffs to Europe, and these countries which got far right or right government, which got ideas from them about like banning or doing things differently when it comes to transgender minors, it got done. Like Netherlands, France got banned like everything. Great Britain, Sweden, Finland got everybody when it comes to these hormone like replacement therapies or whatever on the like clinical trials. And when it comes to Poland, which has some left in the government, these things are completely unregulated. So we have quite comfortable situation because nobody gives basically a damn about transgender people in Poland. So we are free to be ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, I think any other sharing joys and other concerns?
Carol, I know you have your
Yes.
hand up.
I just wanted to say that hope is in action. That's what I believe. We start to organize and work to make things better.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so can we continue? Let's continue. So at this point of at this point, I would like to welcome Gail Nadler. She's going to give us a Devar Torah for this week's Parsha, and it promises to be really enlightening, and I know I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. This is a 6-minute Devar, just so heads up, everybody. My name is Gail Nadler. I came to the city congregation by way of the Talmud class that Michael and Devira Witkin organize. I found it listed on meetup.com, and only after I attended a few times did I learn about this congregation and all that this community has to offer. I really enjoyed digging into the Talmud text and thinking about the Jewish history and how to relate the ancient discussions to our lives today. And as I worked on this Devar Torah, I enjoyed the same thing, looking at the ancient story and relating to the characters and seeing what lessons I could find. This week's Parsha is called Vayetze, which means, and he went out. It tells the story of Jacob as a young man when he went out from his parents' home. In this portion, Jacob is subjected to dishonesty and manipulation from Laban, who is his uncle and his father-in-law. Today, I'm going to summarize part of the story and talk about a lesson I saw about how we can support each other during life's journeys. Jacob leaves home to visit his uncle Laban at the suggestion of his mother, Rebecca, for two reasons: to find a wife and to put some distance between him and his brother Esau, who is very angry about how Jacob managed to get their father's birthright blessing, even though he was the younger twin brother. Jacob lives with his uncle and works for him as a shepherd. He falls in love with his cousin Rachel, and instead of wages, he asks to marry her in exchange for working for 7 years. You may know this part of the story. The morning after the wedding, Jacob sees that his bride was actually Rachel's older sister, Leah. He confronts Laban and asks why he deceived him. Laban says, "In these parts, it is a custom that the older sister be married first. So Jacob should just wait a week, marry Rachel also, and work another 7 years for him." And that's what Jacob does. After those 7 years, Jacob says he wants to return to his home with his wives and children. And Laban says, "You're a great shepherd. You've made me rich. I want you to stay. Name your price." Jacob says, "How about this? From the flocks I work with, I'll take the speckled goats and the dark sheep, and you keep the solid goats and the nice white sheep. I'll keep them separate so we'll know whose is whose. And this way I can build some property of my own." Laban says, "It's a deal." But before Jacob has a chance to go separate the animals, Laban tells his sons to take all the speckled goats and dark sheep away from Jacob's flocks, take them far away, 3 days distance. So when Jacob goes out to the flocks, there are none for him to take as his own. But somehow the animals give birth to a bunch of speckled goats and dark sheep, and Jacob is able to start building his own flocks and some wealth. How did Jacob stand it? I would have been so angry. Laban makes a nice show of asking Jacob what he wants for wages, and then he manipulates the situation to his own benefit. He marries off both daughters, he keeps an expert shepherd, and steals the animals that were promised. Ultimately, Jacob can't stand it anymore, but he doesn't confront Laban. Instead, while Laban is off shearing sheep, he takes his family and property and leaves. Laban hears what happened and chases after Jacob. He catches up with him. Laban says, "Why did you sneak away? I would have sent you off with festive music." Jacob answered, "I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters from me by force." Laban says, "Well, they are my daughters, and their children are my children, and these flocks are my flocks." Jacob says, "I worked for you for 20 years. Your ewes and she-goats never miscarried. I endured scorching days and freezing nights. I worked 14 years for your daughters and 6 more years for the flocks." Oh boy, they really had at it. Eventually, they made a pact. They built a mound and said that neither of them will cross to the other side. Laban will stay on his side, Jacob will stay on his side, and they had a meal together to seal the deal. I look at this story and I sympathize with Jacob. He's at a disadvantage when he arrives. He's alone, he's broke, he has no place to go. What recourse does he have when Laban mistreats him? He finally says something, but only when he's cornered, and then it comes out in a rant. I didn't even include here everything from the text. In this story, Laban does not get his comeuppance. I don't find the end of the Parsha satisfying. There's a character I left out of the story. Let me go back and add him in. Here are 3 places he appears. After Jacob first leaves home, he has a dream one night. He sees angels going up and down a ladder to heaven, and God tells him that he'll be with Jacob on his journey and stay with him till he comes back home. Another time we see the supernatural is when Laban has his sons steal all the speckled goats and dark sheep, and then the solid goats and white sheep somehow have speckled and dark offspring. A little magic helped to keep Jacob on track towards his goal. And God appears again in a dream later in the story and tells Jacob it's time to go home. And it's only then that Jacob makes his plan to leave. Looking at this from a secular humanistic perspective, I think we can play the role that God plays in this story for people in our lives. When someone sets out on a journey to try something new or to make their way in the world, we can let them know that we're here if they need us. We can offer emotional support and encouragement at the beginning. We might be able to offer some practical help, if not magic help, when they encounter an unexpected roadblock. And when we see that they're in a bad situation, we can offer an outside perspective to help them see possibilities and options that they might not think of themselves. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yasha Koach, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have when in the Talmud they ask why wasn't Leah married already, and some of the rabbis have said the reason why she wasn't married already was because she had very poor eyesight, and nobody wanted to marry her. And so I think that kind of fits into our discussion with Kara tonight, about disability. So I look forward to that discussion as well. Gail, thank you so much. And I will continue with another song.
Great. This next one is Lo Yisa Goy. I'll wait till we get the words up. Great. Okay. Lo Yisa Goy El Goy Chevev Lo Yilmadu Od Milchama Lo Yisa Goy El Goy Chevev Lo Yilmadu Od Milchama Lo Yisa Goy El Goy Chevev Lo Yilmadu Od Milchama Lo Yisa Goy El Goy Chevev Lo Yilmadu Od Milchama Everyone divine and tree will live in peace and harmony, and everyone divine and tree will live in peace and harmony. And into plowshares beat their swords, nation shall study war no more. And into plowshares beat their swords, nation shall study war no more. Lo Yisa Goy El Goy Cherev Lo Yilmadu Od Milchama Lo Yisa Goy El Goy Cherev Lo Yilmadu Od Milchama.
Thank you, Rebecca. Beautiful. Our families. At the bottom of the page. Our congregation seeks to expand our understanding and make space for everyone. As the Jewish community grows in its awareness that Jewish families come in various configurations, including intercultural and interracial families, so too may our institutions grow to be open to the diversity of families today. Everyone? With so much emphasis on traditional families, unmarried adults often feel sidelined in Jewish communal life. As more adults remain single, let us be clear that they are a welcome, integral part of our humanistic Jewish community. And we will continue with For Those in Need on the next page. In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we now turn our minds and hearts towards those who need our love, who are ill, who are lonely, who suffer pain, or who have been wronged. So at this time, I'd like to ask for any names of people if they would like to mention especially.
Howard?
Oh, yes. I wanted to mention a friend of ours, Pauline Rothstein, whom we met many years ago in this congregation. She unfortunately had been hit by a scooter and she's recovering from her injuries, and it's getting better, but it still has a ways to go. And I also wanted to mention my niece, Michelle, who recently had surgery and is recovering, but you know, it was the second surgery after one that happened in August. So she's gone through a lot in the last couple of months.
Thank you. Any other names? I'd like to mention my friend Sheldon Silva. He's in the hospital now, but he is on his way out. So we are happy to hear about that. Any other names?
Naomi, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Hannah Gould. She's a 12-year-old girl that I know quite well, my pretend grandchild, who was recently hospitalized in psychiatric because she seemed quite suicidal, and she said she was going to try to kill herself, and she had thoughts and everything. It's very sad, and it's very hard on the family.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other names?
Dominic, I see your hand up. Is there anyone you're thinking?
Oh, my niece got measles. This is just to mention that we soon will get polio. She's 2 years old.
Okay, thank you.
And Judith Shallot put in the chat, Robert, Hannah, and Rosary.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other names?
Okay, Rebecca Refuah Shlema.
The source of strength that dwells
So we will continue now with our memorial and memorial number 2. Death is inevitable, but out of our grief can come understanding. Through our sorrows, we join those who have known bereavement before us and who have yet to do so. Everyone, may we live wisely, courageously, and usefully. May the lives they led give us inspiration for the lives we have yet to live. Zecher Tzadik Levracha. We cherish the memory of our loved ones. And at this time, I would like to ask anyone if anyone has any special names, Yortzeit. It doesn't have to be their Yortzeit. It could be anyone at any time.
Howard?
My sister Judy Budnick, who passed away earlier in the year. Some of you heard me talk about her over the years, and she passed away in June.
Thank you.
Carol?
Stanley Gould. My first husband died many years ago. Thinking about him because his birthday would be this week. Like 95.
Sybil?
Yeah, Dan Jones died this morning. He was the husband of a dear friend of mine, also one of the earliest friends of my late husband. And also I consider that he was a friend of mine and he will be missed.
I would like to include all the people who have died in the Middle East and in Europe, and all over the world. So let's continue with Zecher Tzadik on song on page 31 in the book.
Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of good people bless our days. Zecher Tzadik Livracha.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to ask at this time, would anyone like to volunteer to do the yayin, the wine, and the challah? To lead us in that?
Peter, go ahead. You're muted.
I had my mic open, but this was muted. Correct. Sorry. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and nature's gifts. As we bend nature to our pleasure, we also think about our duties as caretakers of this planet. We dedicate this wine to the joy of Shabbat, to the lives of generations past and generations to come, and to the planet that sustains us. Let us say together, Naim Hakim Ba'olam, Naim HaChaim Bainu, Naim,
Godle.
it's a little small here. Migad Prigofen L'chaim. We celebrate the life within, we celebrate the life in the world. We celebrate the life within us. We cherish those who grow and tend the fruit of the vine to L'chaim, to life.
Perfect.
But I should come to rehearsals.
Naim HaChaim Ba'olam, Naim HaChaim Ba'anu, Naim Migadlei Pri HaGafen L'chaim.
Chala? Chala, anyone?
Howard?
Breaking bread together is an ancient custom in many cultures. It signifies sharing, fellowship, and coming together in peace. We reenact this ritual together as a sign of our common humanity, our care for one another, and for those less fortunate than ourselves. Let us say together, Na'er matnat mazon, Na'er amal kapenu, Na'er lechem ha'aretz, b'te'avon. Wonderful is the gift of food. How wonderful is the work of our hands. How wonderful is the bread of the earth. We cherish those who bring forth bread from the earth.
Na'er matnat hamazon, Na'er amal kapenu, Na'er lechem haaretz, b'te'avon.
Thank you. Now for our concluding thought. It's number 2. Beautiful. Let us stand together now to proclaim our shared ideals and our will to act on them. Let us remember those who have come before us, who have given us life, love, and culture. Let us work together in mutual aid to benefit all. Let us make a world of beauty to be shared by every living thing. Let us be thankful for all that we enjoy in life. Let us work for peace in our relationships, in our communities, and the world. And let us recognize and celebrate our differences. Ken Yehi Ratzon. And our final song.
Great. So this one is not in the booklet, but it's pretty repetitive, which is Shalom Chaverim. So hopefully it's familiar enough where you'll get the hang of it. Shalom Chaverim, Shalom Chaverim, Shalom, Shalom, Lehitraot, Lehitraot, Shalom, Shalom. Goodbye, my dear friends, goodbye, my dear friends, goodbye, goodbye, till we meet again, till we meet again, goodbye, goodbye. Shalom Chaverim, Shalom Chaverim, Shalom, Shalom, Lehitraot, Lehitraot, Shalom, Shalom.
Yashikar, thank you everyone, and thank you for being here with us tonight. And I'm going to hand it over to Kathy to introduce our special guest.
Thank you, Rabbi Frank. Before that, just a few announcements. The rabbi's classes, Rabbi Sema, his classes will continue each week while the rabbi is on sabbatical. Every other Wednesday is Introduction to Judaism at 7:15. Tuesdays and Thursdays are reading the Bible stories through humanistic eyes at 10:30 in the morning. Monday nights is Talmud for secular Jews, 7 p.m. Every Wednesday evening is our weekly Zoom schmooze from 8 to 10. All are welcome. You do not have to be a member. The first Sunday of every month is our online grief support group. Again, everyone is welcome. The next Kids School is December 8th at 3 p.m. The Kids School Hanukkah celebration is December 15th. And our next Shabbat, our Hanukkah Shabbat, is going to be in person at a restaurant on the Upper West Side. It is December 20th, and it is hosted by us, City Congregation. You are all welcome. You don't have to be a member to attend. Please RSVP to reserve your seat. If you do not RSVP, you will not have a seat at the table. So please RSVP. And now for our speaker, Kara Leibowitz, a dear friend of mine, a wonderful person. Kara is a disabilities rights activist and has been for basically her whole existence. And she has spoken at over 30 different national and international conferences, which is quite a boatload, at such a young age. She has joined in many protests. She has been carried out of the Capitol by Capitol Police. I don't know what they're called. The Capitol Police, is that what they're called? I would love to get a mugshot of her because one does exist somewhere. So if anyone wants a copy of her mugshot, join me in that search to get it. And she will be speaking to us about eugenics, which is horrible. So take it away, Kara. Thank you.
On that inspiring note, yes, I do have a mugshot somewhere. I would also very much like to get a hold of that. And I have been bodily dragged out of a House of Representatives hearing room by Capitol Police, one of my finest moments. But I have a PowerPoint for all of you. Actually, we're going to share the screen so that we can switch to the YouTube video. So tonight I'm going to be presenting Life Unworthy of Life, Eugenics, Action T4, and the Impact on Modern Policy. So just to start off, a couple of quotes. If there are indeed human lives in whose continued preservation all rational interest has permanently vanished, the legal system confronts the fateful question of whether it is called upon to actively advocate their asocial continuation, in particular also through the fullest application of criminal law, or, under certain conditions, to permit their destruction. And that's German philosophers Karl Binding and Alfred Hock, permitting the destruction of life unworthy of life. And then, more succinctly, Donald Trump, our terrifying incoming president, has said, in regards to people with disabilities, including his own great nephew, those people, the shape they're in, all the expenses, maybe those kinds of people should just die. So we can clearly see the parallels there. So a little bit about me. Kathy gave a wonderful introduction, but who am I? I'm a disability rights activist, writer, and teacher. I've taught disability history for the CUNY School of Professional Studies. I've spoken at over 30 conferences and events, and my written work has been featured in many places, including Uncanny Magazine, The Washington Post, Everyday Feminism, Able News, and many others. So I have a YouTube clip to start us off. Let me just make sure I'm sharing. Okay, I should be sharing my sound.
The anxieties about urbanization, about unlettered, untutored, relatively uneducated peoples coming in large numbers, the sense that disease was a problem, all of these worries were amalgamated into a belief that immigrants caused these problems, and thus immigration should be held down.
Many white Protestant Americans came to fear they were about to be outnumbered and outbred by the newcomers and their offspring, that they were being replaced. They embraced a new pseudoscience born in Britain called eugenics, which falsely claimed, with no evidence, that everything from poverty to prostitution, disabilities to what they called feeble-mindedness, could be eliminated if the individuals they dismissed as socially defective could be stopped from reproducing.
I wish very much that the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding. And when the evil nature of these people is sufficiently flagrant, this should be done. Criminals should be sterilized, and feeble-minded persons forbidden to leave offspring behind them. Theodore Roosevelt.
The idea was that the bad people have to stop reproducing, and the good people need to reproduce more. Negative eugenics says sterilize the wrong people, snuff them out. And that's the eugenics that the Nazis would pick up on.
Colleges and universities taught eugenics. Medical societies confirmed it. Clergymen preached it. John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie funded it. And some of the most prominent people in America championed it. Margaret Sanger, Alexander Graham Bell, even Helen Keller.
It seems to me that the simplest, wisest thing to do would be to submit cases like that of the malformed idiot baby to a jury of expert physicians. If the evidence were presented openly and the decisions made public before the death of the child, there would be little danger of mistakes or abuses. We must decide between a fine humanity and a cowardly sentimentalism.
33 of the 48 states would eventually enact eugenics laws mandating the forced sterilization of wards of the state deemed physically or mentally unfit. People in prisons, hospitals, and asylums. More than 60,000 Americans would be sterilized without their consent before the last of these statutes was removed from the books in 2014. Eugenics also provided a racist rationale for those convinced immigration needed to be drastically curtailed.
The man of the old stock is being crowded out of many country districts by these foreigners, just as he is today being literally driven off the streets of New York City by the swarms of Polish Jews. These immigrants adopt the language of the American. They wear his clothes, they steal his name, and they are beginning to take his women. But they seldom adopt his religion or understand his ideals. And while he's being elbowed out of his own home, the American looks calmly abroad and urges on others the suicidal ethics which are exterminating his own race. Madison Grant.
Madison Grant was a widely admired conservationist, a friend of presidents, a founder of the Bronx Zoo, responsible in part for saving the California redwoods and preserving the buffalo, and instrumental in creating Glacier, Denali, and Everglades national parks.
And he was also a violent anti-Semite and a violent anti-Italian. And he really was horrified by what he saw happening on the streets of New York. So he publishes a book called The Passing of the Great Race, in which he puts forward the idea that nationalities have eugenic characteristics. He fills it with all sorts of interesting historical so-called data, which is mostly crazy. but it's very persuasive, and it does give the anti-immigration movement, it suddenly gives them science. Science says if we let them in, then they're going to destroy the American gene pool.
For Grant and many others, Jews were a distinct race, not considered white, dismissed as uncouth Asiatics. Grant's supposedly scientific claims about a rigid hierarchy of races was ludicrous. The biological notion of race itself is a fiction. But his ideas caught the imagination of those Americans already opposed to immigration.
People tended to increasingly view nationalities as if they were breeds or species. To liken nationalities to breeds was a fundamental categorical mistake.
Hi, I'm Sarah Botstein. Thanks for watching that excerpt from our film, The U.S. and the Holocaust, which...
All right, so that just provided a little bit of background. As you saw in the video, eugenics is and was, still is, the science of the improvement of the human race by better breeding. Just as you could selectively breed to produce certain traits in plants and animals, you could selectively breed to produce certain traits in humans or breed undesirable traits out. It was really a perversion of Mendelian genetics, you know, what Gregor Mendel did with the pea plants. And it was really about the concept of survival of the fittest. So they mentioned this a little bit in the clip as well, positive versus negative eugenics. Positive eugenics was encouraging the right people to breed. So there were better baby and fitter family contests at state fairs. There were incentives for, you know, the right kind of people, you know, white Protestants to marry. And there were, then negative eugenics is discouraging the wrong people from breeding, and that included sterilization, punitive measures, etc. So, you heard a lot in the clip about how eugenics kind of came to America, and the thought was that America was being swept by the menace of the feeble-minded. It was a broad term used to position really anybody who wasn't the majority, immigrants, women who were interested in sex, etc., as unintelligent. It was mainly based on IQ tests, which incidentally, IQ tests are still used in schools today to determine who can get special ed services or who is labeled intellectually disabled. But IQ tests are fundamentally racist and ableist. So it was really this catch-all description that was used to justify sterilization and other things. And this was not a fringe idea. This was in the early half of the 1900s. And it was a very legitimate science. I put science in quotation marks because it was all pseudoscience, but it was very mainstream. It was discussed in major medical journals. American and German eugenicists traded ideas throughout the first half of the 20th century. And again, it was a legitimate science, according to eugenicists. It had many, many champions among the elite, as you saw in the clip, Theodore Roosevelt, Madison Grant. And in fact, the eugenics research lab was located right here in New York at Cold Spring Harbor. The idea was that, quote unquote, undesirables should be rounded up, incarcerated, and stripped of the ability to procreate. They realized that to keep people confined long term, this huge amount of people would be very costly. So the idea became that they would be incarcerated during their fertile years, sterilized, and then released out in the community where they posed no menace anymore because they couldn't breed. And so German ideas took this a step forward by arguing for the termination of the disabled and incurably ill. And of course, obviously, that extended to Jews later, but it was first started with disabled and incurably ill people. Buck versus Bell. Just going to zero in on this court case for a minute. It was a Supreme Court case designed to legally permit sterilization of feeble-minded individuals. So it was never, the deck was stacked against Carrie Bell, who was the plaintiff in this case. The deck was really stacked against Carrie Buck. She was a foster child who got pregnant as a result of rape. Her foster family had her labeled feeble-minded, and she was admitted to an institution for epileptics and the feeble-minded, where her mother was already an inmate. And she was a test case. The test being, can we get this declared constitutional? Her lawyers were never on her side, sadly. It was never designed to be a case that she would win. But her case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Carrie lost and was sterilized. The decision made it constitutional to sterilize people against their will, and the decision has never been overturned. And Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., in delivering the majority opinion, said 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. And imbeciles was actually a legitimate term for what we today would call intellectually disabled, although it was a very broad category. Imbecile, morons, those were all used as legitimate diagnostic categories. So Action T4 started with the extermination of disabled children in German asylums. It was quite horrific. Parents were told that their children would get special high quality care in special wards, that they were being sent to a special institution where they'd get better care, and then their children were killed, and then after the killing the parents were sent a form letter specifying that their child died of usually some common cause like pneumonia, sometimes appendicitis, something that would kill the child quickly without leaving much time for parents to go and visit their supposedly gravely ill child. In reality, victims were often starved to death, given a lethal injection to the heart, or simply left to the mercy of the elements when heating and air conditioning inside the asylums were turned off. And eventually, these inmates became test cases for gas chambers. And Action T4 was officially discontinued due to public outcry once parents started catching on to what was going on, but unofficially continued through World War II and even a few months afterwards. So this is a direct quote, I believe, from the Nuremberg trials after the war about Action T4. When patients arrived at one of the 6 killing centers, they were unloaded via a covered wooden corridor. Wheelchairs or stretchers were provided for the infirm. The inmates were escorted to a large room where they were completely undressed and supplied with military overcoats. In a separate examining room, patients were relieved of their coats and examined naked. Their identities were checked, and they were closely observed by a physician who attempted to match the size and appearance of the patient with a sham case of death that was shortly to follow. Patients were then weighed, photographed, stamped with a number, and given a piece of cardboard with a corresponding number for retrieving their clothes later. Those who possessed gold dental work were further marked with an X on their backs. Others were also carefully marked if they were deemed appropriate for scientific autopsy after death. Most patients' fears were allayed by these seemingly routine medical procedures, which they had all undergone many times before. And that last line was particularly chilling to me as a disabled person who has been at the mercy of the medical establishment all my life. You learn to put a certain amount of trust in the medical establishment, and to know how horrifically that trust was betrayed, it's just haunting. Impact on modern policy, we've already seen the impact on modern policy. Eugenics grew out of panic over immigration and quote unquote inferior races mixing with white Americans. And we've seen how the right wing panic over immigration echoes these ideas. Donald Trump, as I stated before, has advocated for letting them just die. And that's reflected in his policies to disproportionately target disabled Americans, trying to gut the Affordable Care Act, trying to get rid of Medicaid, which is the only insurance that's required to pay for home and community-based services for people with disabilities. And conversations about medical assisted dying can also start to play into eugenic ideas, especially when you talk about suffering and deciding who's suffering and, are they suffering enough to be granted this mercy death, and who decides, and all that stuff. So I just have 2 suggested books if you want to learn more. Imbeciles, the Supreme Court, American Eugenics, and the Sterilization of Carrie Buck by Adam Cohen, and War Against the Weak by Edwin Black. And that's it. I know that there were some things in the chat, so let me see. Yes, somebody recommended Paul A. Lombardo's book. That's also very good. Yeah, so we have plenty of time. Any questions?
Yes, Peter.
Is it known at any point where in Nazi Germany, especially Hitler, picked up on this idea or even talked about it or even put it into action in the early 30s, especially, and of course, eventually during World War II? Is that known at all, Kara?
Yeah, I believe it's fairly well known that Hitler corresponded with American eugenicists, and I think also kind of hero worshipped them, and that's where he got a lot of his ideas.
I should also add, I've read the 1927, the Buck versus Bell, what do you call it, ruling decision, and it's even more, it's scarier, more pathetic when you really read the decision from someone who, I guess for generations since, thought Oliver Wendell Holmes was a man of principle and wisdom, but finding this very, very acceptable. It's rather disturbing.
It really is. It really, really is.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Jim.
First off, thank you for presenting tonight. You mentioned a number of the laws that were adapted here in the States. What is the latest that one law was finally taken off? Which state was it that removed that law?
That is a good question. I don't know which state it was, but I know it was quite late.
Samantha?
Hey, hi. I'm just gonna fangirl. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm the resident disability activist with Kathy and the rabbi at City Congregation, and I've read your work for a while, and
oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.
So you went to CUNY?
I did. I went to CUNY School of Professional Studies for my master's degree in disability studies, and I've taught in their BA in disability studies program.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, I was actually thinking about doing the certificate there.
You
I mean,
should.
so I have a PhD in music and disability studies. I studied with Joe Strauss at CUNY.
Okay.
I don't know if you know him. Anyway, he's the he was the person that made me realize that disability is a protected category. Like, I have this story from 2007 in a seminar with him. He's also a Jew, of course, right? Like, we have a long history of disability
Yes.
studies. Anyway, this was incredible. I'm sure you saw in my chats, I was just like fangirling as you were giving your presentation.
I'm so
It was
glad. Thank you.
No, it's so important. Like, I mean, okay, I just want to separate for everyone. Eugenics is different from right to die, right? Like, I know that that's like, that can be like really contentious, but eugenics is not right to die, just for everybody else, right? Like, it's okay when people decide that they have a right to die. And I think that's actually, I mean, I'd like you to, like, can you respond to that? Like,
Yeah. So, it's a tricky topic and it's one that I have very complex feelings about.
as do I. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I believe that it is within people's right to decide when they would like to die, when their suffering has become too much. But
Or even if they just want to, like, be like, okay, I'm happy, my life has come to a close. Like, can you
Right.
respond to the idea that death and, like, just death and, like, growing older, ageism, like, difference, like, people, like,
Yeah,
who are not
it's
robustly healthy, like,
it's
our
very
society
complex
is, like,
topic.
allergic to it, right?
Yeah. It's such a complex topic. But there is, in my mind, no way that we can legally pass right to die laws. Um, there's no way we can do that without it becoming a slippery slope. I mean, if you look at who's being offered medical assisted dying in Canada, um, so many people with disabilities uh, that are life limiting or not. Some are, some aren't. Are being offered medical assistance in dying, and until and unless we have a robust suite of programs and services for people with disabilities to live and live the lives that they desire, there's no way that we can ethically, I think, um, say that we can offer them death, not before we've offered them life first. I've learned a lot about this from the late Diane Coleman, who just passed away about a month ago. She was the founder and CEO of Not Dead Yet. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I see you nodding. For everyone else, Not Dead Yet was an organization founded to advocate against euthanasia and medical assisted dying. And I highly encourage you check it out, whether or not you agree with with my ideals, with Diane's ideals on euthanasia and medical assisted dying, because she wrote quite eloquently about them. And I actually have an obituary for Diane Coleman that I wrote that's featured in this month's issue of Able News, funnily enough. But yeah, I see Dominic raising your hand.
Yes, Dominic.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kara.
Thank you, Samantha.
My question goes to that after World War II, like the killing of a disabled person and deemed like feeble-minded continued for a few months after World War II. Could you
Yes.
extend a bit?
Yeah, so the Action T4 program was, like I said, unofficially continued for even a few years past World War II. I don't know exactly what was the rationale behind that. You know, I don't know if the Nazis thought they could get away with it because they were just disabled people, dying. Uh, I'm not sure. But it did continue even after the war ended.
This is really like a topic to explore for me. And I will.
Yeah, definitely.
I see Carol's hand, then Peter. Carol, you're muted. Carol, you're muted. Okay, I can see that you're having some trouble, so you work that out. We'll go to Peter and then come back to you.
Kara, I have a sort of a follow-up question. Getting past World War II, when this was obviously very focused and part of the Nazi regime, the Nazi thought, Jewishly, since World War II and eugenics and all this other thinking, where did it start breaking down and being dismissed? And is it have a certain effect on the Jewish community since World War II? I'm thinking maybe even to modern times in the Jewish context, rather.
That's a really interesting question. Um, I'm not sure it's ever really fallen out of fashion, unfortunately. I mean, we see eugenic ideas today, in Donald Trump's rhetoric and rhetoric about immigration and, building the wall and all that stuff.
So why does it still hold on, Kara? Sorry. Why does it still have a grip on things?
Because ultimately, people with disabilities in particular, whether they truly, have a disability or whether they're just regarded as having a disability, in the case of, the label feeble-minded, are inherently seen as less worthy of life, as inherently having an inferior quality of life, and just being inferior people. I mean, many, disability activists that I know have stories where people come up to them on the street. I don't think this has ever happened to me, but people come up to disabled people on the street and say, "If I were like you, I would kill myself." And that's rhetoric that's happening today, unfortunately.
Even still but the Jewish community, just want to focus. Certainly, I think doesn't feel that way. I mean, reading Judith Heuman's book a few years ago, and she died, I think, last year or something. And if you don't know about Judith Heumann, she's
Yes,
actually a fascinating. I'm sure I know you do, but to others,
Yes.
she's actually quite fascinating. She had a lot of chutzpah, I'll tell you that much.
Yes, and she was a Jew, and she was sometimes called the mother of the disability rights movement. And I got to know her quite well, actually. When I lived in Washington, D.C., I was working for the National Council on Independent Living, which Judy helped found. So I got to know Judy quite well. And Samantha says, may her memory be a blessing, of course. May her memory be a blessing. Highly, highly recommend Judy's book if you haven't read it. It's interesting. I don't know if the Jewish community at large feels this way, or if the Jewish community, you know, being more aware of the atrocities that can be perpetuated on people is sort of more wise to the topic. You know, I really don't know, and it's an interesting question. I'd be interested in some sort of poll or something that you know, would reveal if certain groups are sort of more or less partial to these eugenic ideas.
I would think Jews would not support eugenics.
You
Period.
would think, and I hope you're right. I really hope you're right, but I unfortunately don't have much faith in the human race as a whole.
I see Judith's hand is up. Judith? You muted, Judith. There you go.
Yes. Carol, I liked when you said offer life before you offer death. And I wonder
Yes.
if you could talk a little bit about, from your point of view, where is assistance and advocacy most lacking, and what are the organizations that you think are effective in moving us forward?
Yeah, so, you know, I often say that being a disability advocate is like running around putting out, you know, 10 fires at once. You're dragged in 10 different directions because there's always something urgent happening, always something that needs to be addressed. So I don't know if I can prioritize kind of one issue over another, but certainly with this incoming administration, we need to protect the Affordable Care Act. We need to protect Medicare and Medicaid. You know, we fought during the last Trump administration for those rights, and we will fight again. You know, ADAPT is a great organization that uses civil disobedience tactics, among others, to advocate for disability rights. I've been arrested with ADAPT twice. And we actually have a very active chapter here in New York City and the general downstate region of New York. I haven't been as involved with them as I'd like to be over the past year or so because of my job situation, but now that's changed, so I'd like to get more involved. National Council on Independent Living, which I worked for in Washington, D.C., they advocate for all people with disabilities to be able to live in their own homes and communities, not in institutions. The National Disability Rights Network, they provide legal help through their protection and advocacy organizations in each state. So they provide legal assistance to people with disabilities. There are just so many out there that are fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
I see Anna's hand up. Anna, you muted? There you go.
Sorry. Yeah, two things I'd like to address. One thing that came to mind is to broaden the topic. You know, disability is a very generalized word. A lot of people there are various kinds of disabilities, and a lot of people have disabilities, some of which the outside world cannot see. You know, there are psychological disabilities, et cetera, and not always apparent to anyone. That's one thing that sort of broadens the topic. There's all kinds of mental illness, some of which are not that apparent and can be hidden. So there's a lot that we don't know about the human brain.
Yes, absolutely.
The second thing is, and this is more a personal question, I'm just curious. I am not an activist. I don't have the personality for it. I do other things. And I'm just wondering, you seem like a very strong, unusual person. And I'm just wondering when and how it came about that you're such an activist fighter for this. I mean, you're not among the majority of people. So I'm just curious about that personally. What motivated you and how the hell did you do it? And what I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been disabled all my life. To be candid, I was born with cerebral palsy, and I've acquired several more disabilities along the way, some of which are more apparent than others. I've kind of always been an activist. I think when you are disabled, and especially when you are visibly disabled in this society, you have to at least be an advocate for yourself, if not for other people. You know, I grew up in mainstream school, and it was a double-edged sword. I got a great education, and was able to learn with my peers. But being a disabled child in mainstream school, in advanced classes especially, was very difficult, because a lot of people can't seem to reconcile academic intelligence with disability. So I've been used to fighting for my rights from an early age, and I think I've always known that this is what I wanted to do with my life. I went to college. I majored in special education because of my struggles in the school system. I wanted to give back. I wanted to make sure that nobody went through what I went through. That didn't quite work out for a variety of reasons. I have my degree in education, but I'm not certified to teach, at least not teach K through 12. And then I went on to get my master's in disability studies from the CUNY School of Professional Studies. And that was just an incredible experience. Samantha, I know you were talking before about perhaps doing the certificate program. I can't encourage it enough. It really, I thought I knew a lot about disability and disability history and disability studies and disability culture before, but my master's degree really brought it to a whole new level. So that's my long-winded way, I guess, of saying that I've always been this way. It's not a life for everybody. A life of advocacy can be tough, especially in these current times. But I've kind of always been this way.
Did you have a lot of support from your family?
I do. I'm very, very lucky, because I know a lot of people who don't have support from my family. My family has always just wanted what was best for me, what would make life easiest for me. Always open to hearing what I have to say. Yeah, I'm very, very lucky to have the support of my family. Yeah, I have one older sister. She's a couple years older than me. But my sister and my parents have always been very supportive of me. I'm very lucky.
Carol, did you want to try unmuting to ask your question? Okay. Does anyone... Oh, Dominic, I see your hand up.
Oh yes, I have a kind of a cerebral palsy, I have walked a little bit later. I was a floppy child, and basically have a incoordination which have absolutely like my mother has decided at 5 years old, if I at 5 years old I am not able to drive a car, at least start to drive a car, I should get a driving license, which basically after my earning like bachelor master's degree in chemistry has basically like killed my career in this field, because when you not have a driving license, you can drive to these various companies which are around the town, because they're outside nearly always. And this is like stemming like from my grandparents and parents, like regarding me as disabled. I am not regarding myself as that severely disabled not to get a driving license, because I've seen the people with worse disabilities to get accommodations of a car.
Mm-hmm.
Just to like make my point.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you didn't feel like you had support from your family. You know, and I understand about not regarding yourself as disabled. Not everybody, you know, will identify with having a disability. For me, it's a label that I claim very proudly. Yeah, any other questions, comments? And you can ask anything, honestly. It doesn't have to be related to the content of my presentation. I always say when I do these presentations, I'm an open book. And, you know, I always say, if you want to ask something about disability, now's the time, you know, not when I'm, you know, trying to get somewhere on time, or, you know, I'm juggling a coffee and, you know, a pastry in my hands and I'm trying to drive my wheelchair, you know. But people ask me invasive questions all the time, you know, in random places. But I always say when I do these presentations, now is the time for those questions.
I see Dominic, Samantha, and Peter. So will Dominic, you go first?
Yeah, I wanted to say when I've just said in the group chat of a student club, student society of Hebrew Philology Students, that I have an ISD. I am like food selective, which is like symptomatic of many autistic people, which can be like visible when I am going for Rosh Hashanah Seder or Passover Seder, and I won't be eating all the things which are around because I haven't learned it as a child. And when it got to this point, like the presence of this scientific society like removed me from the chat and said I am no longer in that student society.
Thank you for that. I see other people with their hands up.
Yes, Samantha.
Hey, thank you so much for this. Do you think disabled people are actually a minority?
Yes, I do. We are the largest minority.
No, but wait, we're the what?
We're the largest minority.
Yeah, but
we
are we really a minority? Like, I feel like there are so many.
I believe we are.
No, I'm not saying that we're not a minority because we don't deserve protections. We're a suppressed group. We're marginalized. What I'm saying is that disabled people are like, it's like the global majority when people talk about Black people as a minority. Actually, there are a lot of Black people in the world. Similarly, there are a lot of disabled people in the world, and disability is something that everybody experiences.
Yes.
Even temporarily. That's what I'm saying. So, like, when people are like, you know, I kind of like, we still, like, this whole minority thing when it comes to social welfare, right? I'm doing an MSW. When it comes to social work, like, it's not about how few people there are, it's about who needs the most help, right? So, like, disabled people need a lot of help because we are 100% victimized, preyed upon, marginalized. But it's not about how few we are. We're actually a lot of people. And it's a human condition. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we are about a quarter of the world's population. And like you said, everybody experiences disability, and disability is the only minority that anybody can join at any time. And there's often a lot of talk about the disabled and the elderly population. But, you know, a lot of elderly people, most elderly people, if they're fortunate to live long enough, will experience some sort of disability. My grandma had dementia. She also had trouble walking towards the end of her life. You know, elderly people who have trouble hearing, trouble seeing, arthritis, those are all disabilities. Although many elderly people would vehemently deny that they are disabled.
Peter?
I'm going to start this and throw it a little bit to Rabbi Tamburello. I don't know this. In Jewish texts, in the canon of Jewish texts, is this any disability or, and I'm not obviously not eugenics, but disabilities, is that reflected in any writings in the Jewish canon, to your knowledge? And if so, is it negative mostly, or is there anything positive in there?
I think you find texts where disabilities are talked about, and they are usually in the context of the religious responsibilities. You know, so in other words, can a blind person read the Torah? Which obviously they couldn't read the Torah. You know, so they permitted to hear the Torah in another way? So these were things that the rabbis really kind of struggled with, but I don't know of any particular reading where a disability is mentioned, except for the fact that if people harm someone, which causes a disability to that person, then they would be liable for a compensation. You know, things like that are found in Jewish law all the time.
Peter, you're muted.
Realize that. Does this include compassion, rachmanis, for those quote unquote disabled or disabilities? And Kara, have you even seen anything in text if you've gone into research for this? Both. Who can answer? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd defer to the rabbi on that.
Yeah. I would have to, investigate that more. It's not my area. But there's an interesting thing that had to do with the reading about Abraham and Sarah recently, and about the Torah portion. And according to the Mishnah and according to the Talmud, they were tumtim, which means that they did not have sexual organs until they were revealed later on in life. And so that accounted for the fact that Sarah was not able to conceive until she was like in her 90s. And so there are all kinds of things. And there is a whole treatise in one of the Talmudic sections about Sukkot, and the idea that during Sukkot, people had to make sacrifices in the temple, and which people were considered worthy to bring sacrifices to the temple. And so, there's this whole category of people that I would say have disabilities, not disabilities, but differences in their physical bodies, and they were categorized as you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, and you are worthy to bring the sacrifice too. So. Yeah, I think I see some people investigating this. So, Gail, did you have something?
I mean, it's okay to say that they had disabilities. You don't have to say they had differences, right? Like, it's okay. They were disabled. That's great. I want to see disability representation, right?
You know, now seems like a good place. I see your hand, Anna. Now seems like a good place for us to open it up to the informal schmooze for group discussions of things. Kara, you definitely are welcome to stick around. You know, people might have more things to ask you. If not, you are, free to breeze on out. But yeah, let's open it up. The formal Q&A is ended.